have yours. Oh, I downloaded it at one point. Let's see if I can just find that without having to go. There it is. All right, so everybody should have this bird. You're really going to want to make sure that you have the navigator open, that you have your layers palette open. Let me just get rid of this. That you have your history palette open. So again, if you can't remember where that is. If you can't remember how to get one of these palettes open, window, right? If you're missing your toolbar, if you're missing one of your palettes, just go up to the window menu and choose it. Because you really need these three things open today for this. Okay, so the first selection tool that we're going to talk about is over here. It's on our toolbar, and it's the second button down from the top. There's a couple different selection tools that you can get to. One is called the elliptical marquee, and one is called the rectangular marquee. We're going to look at the elliptical one. So when you click the button, if you can't see it, you'll just have to click and hold, right? And it'll fold out, and you can come down to the elliptical marquee. Couple things before you start clicking around with this tool. Always look up on your option bar. When you grab a new tool, look up and see what your options are up here. Some of the big things up here there are some buttons up at the top. When you get any selection tool, you're going to get these little boxes. And the first one is a new selection. So you're going to newly select something for the first time. The next one says add to a selection. So that's if you already have a selection going and you want to add to it. So you're not done selecting. If you want to take away, so you've accidentally selected something you didn't mean to select. And then the next one's called intersect, and we're not going to deal with that one, so don't worry about it. And then also there's this thing called feather, right? And we're going to get to this in a minute. You may have a different number in the feather box. Don't worry about it right now. We're going to change that together in a minute, but that is something that's super important. So the first thing I want you to do, actually, let's all just change it now so we have the same number. So if you just click right in that little box that says feather, and you just make that a 5. So 5 and then enter. And we'll talk about what that does in a minute, okay? Just so we all have the same number to start with so nobody has any problems. All right, so we've got this circular selection tool. And with it, you can click and drag out a circle. And your ants start marching. So you can go ahead and try that. If you didn't get the circle all the way around the bird, no big deal. Just start again. If you want the selection to go away, so some people are like, I want to start all over again, but I don't want this selection there at all. In most programs, you're probably thinking like PowerPoint and such, you just click over the edge and it goes away, right? Just click away from it. And in this program, it does not work. So when you click over to the side, it doesn't make your selection go away, at least with this tool. To make your selection stop, you have to go to the Select menu and choose Deselect. So try that. So just get kind of comfortable with that. You make a selection. Everything right now inside this circle is selected. I go to the Select menu. I deselect if I want it to go away. It's kind of cumbersome, but that's just how Photoshop deals with deselecting. That way you're not trying to click away from the item. Okay, so go ahead and make a big circle around your pelican as much as you can. I mean, we're going to undo this in a minute. So everything I do right now is going to happen inside the circle. So if I want to make everything inside the circle black and white, I could go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. There's a black and white feature there. All right, and you can see you can go ahead and just click OK. We're not going to play around with the different types of black and white. But you can see, it affected everything inside the circle. Makes sense, right? So far, so good, logical. That may not be really what we wanted. Maybe we wanted to select the actual bird and not the sky part. But, we didn't get that choice with this tool, okay? You go ahead and back up on your history palette over here. So you're in black and white. You can just back up a step, and that black and white will go away as soon as you do something else. Okay, so everybody has that one. Remember those buttons over here. So right now, my button automatically got turned to Add to Selection. So if I wanted to, I could add to this selection by just kind of coming in here and making more. Anytime I made another selection, especially if it crosses this selection, it kind of adds to. If I want to take away from the selection, I can come up here and I can choose subtract from the selection. And I can kind of cut pieces out. It's kind of a silly way to select things, but sometimes there's a need for that. But I just kind of wanted you to get the idea of what that does. All right, so these are all just kind of ways to add to and take away from a selection. You can take little bites out of your selection that way. Okay, let's go ahead and make our selection go away again. How do you do that? Select, deselect, or command on your keyboard, Command D will make those ants start marching and you're done with your selection. All right, the other thing I want to show you is feather before we move on to another tool. So I told you that this is going to become really important. So how you select things, especially when you cut them out, it really matters. This feather thing really matters. And instead of explain it, I'm just going to show you what it does. So go ahead, make a small circle. And whether it's a circle or an oval, I really don't care. Just up in the sky area somewhere. Just make your marching ants, just click and drag out a circle. All right, and we are actually gonna cut a piece out. We're gonna cut that out. And in Photoshop, let me say this really clearly because I said it first hour and then 4 or 5 people didn't listen to this part. You cannot right click and choose cut. I know that when you right click, you can see, yeah, some people say, but I see it in there. It says via cut, layer via cut, layer via copy. This is not the same thing that we want to do. We just want to cut and paste something out, okay? So please don't use your right click. I'm just going to click one time to close that dialog box. And if you want to do a cut, you got to go to the image menu. I'm sorry, edit menu. And choose cut from there. It is very different than the other one, okay? So please don't, forget that because that'll kind of mess you up. All right, so it cut a circle out in the sky. Okay, so that makes sense. It looks like somebody maybe hole punched it or used a cookie cutter to cut it out. Now let's increase our feather, our number of, our feather number. Let's put a 75 in there now. 75, enter. Make sure you hit enter. And now let's draw another circle over here. And notice, I don't know if you noticed this, but when I draw my circle now with that 75 feather, watch what happens. Oops. It kind of, hold on. Just back up a couple. So it kind of jumps, doesn't it? Like when you, ooh, is 75 too high? Oh, I have my, I don't know if yours accidentally got pushed too, but if you get in that message that's saying no pixels or more than 50%, it just means that these buttons were turned on. So I'm going to go back to new selection here. So if you're not able to make a selection, you just got to start that first button at the top, new selection has to be pressed. Somehow mine got pressed. I think I accidentally pressed it. But now that we have a higher feather, it actually kind of snaps in a weird way. So I make a big circle and then it snaps small. So once you get your ants marching, go ahead and cut that circle. Let's see what that one looks like. Edit, cut. Very different look. So let me just explain to you what is happening. The first one had a feather. They call it a feather. I think it's kind of a stupid name because it doesn't really tell you what it's doing. It's basically a hard selection. So when you're using a low feather, it is just selecting exactly on the line. So wherever you drew that line, that's where it's cutting or whatever you're going to do. If you have a soft selection or a high feather number, like 75, that's a pretty high number, it's kind of like somebody cut it out with a cotton ball. It's a much softer selection. It's much more wavy. All right, so just so you know what a lot of the tutorials you're going to do the rest of the semester are going to say, use a feather of 75, use a feather of 5. So I want you to know where it is and kind of what it does, even if you're not still real sure what it does. Low numbers give you that really perfect circle. High numbers give you a soft circle. Okay, just think of it that way for now. All right, go ahead and back up let's get rid of our cutouts here. I'm going to back up until my cutout is gone. Okay, and I'm just going to deselect. All right, so let's look at another tool because again, our goal here is to cut this bird out and put him on a more interesting picture because this is not a very interesting picture. Our next tool down is called the lasso tool. Let's take a look at what that one does. There's a couple different ones in there. We're just going to use the regular one. It looks like somebody, like a cowboy, like yeehaw. So this one, you just click and hold and you drag around the objects. And, you know, it's really hard to get perfect with this. You can imagine if I was trying to actually, you know, get right in between all these feathers. I mean, who has that steady of a hand? Nobody. That would be really hard to get with this tool. But what this tool is good for is just a really, we call this an informal selection. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter how perfect it looks. Cut it out, paste it somewhere else or something like that. And here's what you're going to need to know for the test on these selection tools. And I will give you a review sheet on this. You're going to have to know what the tool is and what it's good for. So the rectangular and the elliptical tools that we just used, they're really good if you want to select a rectangle or a circle. So like when I'm doing retouching on eyes, it's a great tool. The circular tool is great. When I want to select something that's really simple and I don't need a really perfect selection, this is a good tool. So again, it's not going to really work well for us here, but it is a good tool for just an informal selection. Let's deselect. I think we can do better. I think we can get more exact on this, but if you did need a really quick, easy selection, that would be one way to go. The next one down, if you click and hold on the button underneath, you'll see there's two different selection tools in here. We're going to look at quick selection to start out with. Quick selection, choose that one. This is a favorite of most beginning students. Make sure that you choose the very first button here where it says New Selection. So we're starting off with a new selection. And this is where you're going to have to start doing some zooming. So before, just zoom in a little bit and you can kind of move around. I'm going to start with these feathers. Now before we start selecting with this tool, you have to make sure brush size is the most important thing. So right now, my brush is really teeny tiny. All right, I need a bigger brush. Now I can go up over here into my brushes. So up here on your option bar, remember this? This is a lot like clone stamping and that other tool that we used. I can make the brush bigger. There's a bigger brush. We call that a brush. Or I can make it smaller. And if that gets really tiresome, what? Keyboard shortcuts. I taught you some keyboard shortcuts to make that instead of doing it. Brackets. On the right next to the letter P. Big, big, small, small. That is so helpful, especially for this one. This is going to be really a pain if you have to keep coming up here to change your brush size all the time. All right, so to use this tool, here's how it works. Look up here for 1 minute before you start trying it. You have to get your brush or your circle the right size. So I want to go up into these feathers. That's going to be a little too big, so I'm just going to make it a little smaller, and I'm going to run it along the side. I'm zoomed in a little bit too much. So I'm going to run it along these feathers, and it's trying to find the edge. And you can stop every so often and back out. Don't worry about that. It'll just go ahead and add. You'll have a little plus sign, and it's just adding to your selection. And it's just trying to run along the edge. And then I can come over here, and I can move down. And I'm just trying to get along the edge of this bird. So you go inside the object when you're using this tool. And you can just keep moving around. Use your navigator. If you like keyboard shortcuts, if you hold your space bar down, you get, this is called the helping hand, this little hand. And it allows you to kind of move around, and it doesn't take your selection away. I kind of prefer that, but a lot of people love that navigator too. Did I get the beak all the way? Oh yeah, I got the beak all the way. If you zoom way in, you can see there's some parts it's not getting. So sometimes you have to get in here and really force it to find the right area. Especially around the feet. I find the feet, it has a hard time. See where it didn't get the feet in there, did it? So I got to get in there and get those feet cleaned up so that they're in my selection. I want to cut this bird out, and if I cut it without having all of the bird in there, it's going to break the bird in half, which is disgusting, right? No, it won't look realistic. All right, now when you get into this feather area, it gets kind of weird. So look in here. See where it didn't get all of the area in here. So it's going to include some of that blue. If I cut this out, it's going to take blue with it, and that's going to look really fake. So what I can do is I can go up and I can go to the negative button, and I can take away from the selection. Remember, this was subtract from selection? So now I'm going to zoom way in there. And I'm going to basically tell Photoshop, take all these pixels out. I got to make my brush a little smaller. So don't include all this blue stuff, because I know that that's going to look fake if I bring in the bird and there's this blue halo around it. Right? So you can see, yeah, would it take you a long time to select something that's this complicated? Absolutely. But it's kind of worth it, because when you cut it out, it's going to look realistic. All right, I'm going to show you one other selection method. And each one of them, some people love one over the other. I know that some of you are like, but hey, I just got this bird selected really well, but I'm going to tell you to deselect. There's an easier way to select this bird. One other way. Deselect. Let's try the last tool that you're going to use today. And that is called the magic wand. And let me tell you what it's good for. Magic wand is really good for things on a plain background. If you have an item that you find on, let's say you go out on Google and you find a picture of a beach ball and it's on a plain white background, that is so easy to select. So here's how it works, this magic wand. I'm just going to click in a plain area, and it has something called tolerance, which is how many pixels it's going to select. Let's start with a low tolerance just so you can see what it does. Go with something like a 2. So you just type 2, enter, and then click in a plain area like the blue. And you can see it's selected all the blue pixels and then one other like shade of blue. So, you know, blue number 25 and blue number 26. 2 different shades of blue. Now, so that tells me my tolerance wasn't high enough. Let's bring it up to 20. The higher the tolerance, the more colors it's going to select. Deselect, go to select, deselect. Now when I click in a blue area, it selected whatever shade of blue I clicked on, and then 20 other shades of blue that are similar but not the same. So hopefully you can kind of see what tolerance does. Another nice thing is I can also zoom in, I'll use my navigator, to those feathers that are giving me a hard time. And again, I've got my plus sign. Can you see how there's a plus sign on my magic wand? So that's adding 2. And so now I can kind of click in between and say these 2. I want these included. I want these included. And so I can do basically what's called cleaning up the edges. So I don't want to bring those blue pixels in. I just want the bird. And I think I actually, if I was doing this myself, I probably would have went a little higher. I probably would have went to a 30 tolerance, because I think it would have cleaned up all. See how my selection, when you really look, it's kind of missing some of these blue pixels. So my guess is if I would have went to a 30 or 40 tolerance, it would have got those blue pixels too. So something to think about. Sometimes you don't know if it really got all the shades of blue or white. But this is pretty close. So I'm just kind of going around the edge, picking up as many as I can. So you may like the quick selection tool. I know a lot of new users love that other one. I like Magic Wand. It's kind of up, you know, everybody has their thing that they like for selecting. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this guy out. So even if you didn't get a perfect selection, don't worry about it. You don't have to go around and get it perfect right now. That's something that you'll practice over time. Good enough. He looks like he's selected. All right, what do I have selected? I heard the bird and I heard the whole thing. So there's a third option. Just the sky. Right now, I just have the sky selected. Does that sort of make sense? You sort of have to look at it for a minute, don't you? You have the ants marching around the edge of the picture all the way around, and then you have it marching around the bird itself. So really, if I were to cut this out right now, it would just cut out the sky. I want to cut the bird out and take him and put him in a new file. So what we have to do is something that you're going to have to do all the time in Photoshop. Inverse your selection. Sometimes it's easier to select something that's simple, like the sky, and then swap it. So I'm going to go to the Select menu. Notice that a lot of things to do with selection are in the Select menu. And I'm going to choose Inverse. And my ant's now marching just around the bird. Does that make sense? So, you know, sometimes it's easier. You got to look at the picture and say, what would be the easiest thing to select? Maybe it's easier to select the background and then inverse it when I'm done. That's exactly what we did. All right, we're going to cut this guy out, but before we do, we need to find a picture to put it into. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my internet. I'm using Firefox. You can be using Google. I don't care, whatever you want. So go onto the internet, And think of a place that you would like to put the bird into. Name a place, you guys, anybody.
Beach.
The beach. This morning we put him on a baseball field. Last semester we put him at a rave, which was pretty weird. I had him on a bus one time. Dive bombing a bus. Okay, so I just typed the beach and then images, right? You guys know how to find images by now, that's for sure. And then, of course, whenever you're looking for an image, you're going to go to Search Tools, and you're going to go to Size, and you're going to choose Large, so you can see all the largest pictures. And you can pick anything you want. You don't have to pick beach. If you want to pick outer space or, you know, a party or whatever. Where shall I put him? I'm not putting him with that lady. How about these ladies? Yeah, he's going to be helping these people with their yoga. All right. And don't forget that, you know, once you find the picture, you go over here to View Image so you can get the biggest possible picture available. So I did that and it popped up and it's much bigger. And I'm just going to right click on that picture and choose Save Image As. And I'm just going to save it on my desktop. If you have a folder called Tutorials, you might put it in there so you're keeping things nice and neat. But put it wherever you want, where you'll know where you can find it. Click Save. And then I'm going to open it up. And it should open directly into Photoshop if you have it set up correctly. It's a weird, long picture, though. Okay. So there's my picture. I want to put the bird into this picture. So I'm going to go back. So now you should have two tabs up here. You've got one that's called Pelican, and you've got one that whatever your other picture is. And I may have went too fast. Are you guys still looking for pictures? You need me to hold up? Give you 30 seconds to get a picture open. Anybody need help? Raise your hand, I'll come help you get a picture. No, you guys are bright, aren't you? Okay. So, I go back to my bird picture. You should still have your ants marching, I hope. And your bird is select. Make sure it's your bird, not the background, right? And we're going to cut him out. So remember, you have to go to the Edit menu and choose Cut. You can do Copy as well. It doesn't matter. I always like to cut things because I want to know that I got what I got. And if you copy, you can't tell, like, what did I actually just get? And if you cut something and you change your mind, you know, you can always back up. So it's not a big deal if you cut it. So yeah, it looks like I got the bird. So if yours didn't do this, if the bird stayed in the sky cut, then you know that you did something wrong, right? You probably didn't inverse it. All right, then I'm going to go to my new file up on the top here to switch files, right up here. And I'm going to do an Edit, Paste, and then hold up. Don't click anywhere. Hopefully everybody's bird came in. All right. First thing we got to do is we got to move the bird, but you cannot move the bird with the magic wand tool. You got to get the move tool. So at the very top of your toolbar, there's a tool, there's a button that's called move, and that's what it's for, to move things. And when you do that, hopefully you see these little boxes. Anybody not see those little boxes? Okay, and I'll come help you in 1 second. If you do not see these little boxes, you have to come up here and put a check mark in Show Transform Controls. Probably your check mark is missing. And then also, everybody confirm that you have one that says Auto Select. And I'm not going to tell you what that one does, just that it helps you. Okay? What happened? It's a select menu. And it's the third one now. Inverse. No, all right. Everybody good? Yeah, so you cut the background. Okay. So let's back up. Let's go back up to where it was selected. The magic one. Just the very first magic one. No, I mean that's about the last magic one. Okay. That's fine. Okay. So it need to be inverse. So select. Inverse. There you go. See how they're just merged around the bird now? Now edit cut. Yep. Did you do edit paste? Edit. Paste. There it is. Yep. All right. So everybody has those two check marks, right? And I will tell you, those get turned off all the time. I don't know how. All the time. People are calling me over and like, I don't see those little boxes. I want to resize my item. So when you don't see them, show transform controls. I don't know how they get turned off, but they do. All right, so now, now it's pretty much kind of like PowerPoint, right? You grab the corner, you can resize. Here's the thing that I want you to be careful of, and you'll hear me saying all the time, hold your shift key down. If you just start resizing like this, look at what you can do to your bird. I mean, you can really make it look like roadkill if you're not careful. So I'm just doing whatever I want. I'm not holding any key down. I can go ahead and come up here and hit the no sign after I do that, and it'll pop back to where it was before. But when you're resizing things, so I come to a corner, hold your shift key down when you resize, and then you can make him smaller, but you can't pull him out of proportion. I do take points off if you're making collages, which we will do later, and I see something that looks like that, I will take points off. Okay? I don't want to see things that are stretched out of proportion. So if it happens, if you haven't done anything yet, you can hit the no sign. A lot of times it'll bounce back. So I'm going to make him a little bit smaller because I want him to be kind of dive bombing these people. When I'm done resizing and I'm sure that it looks good, then I'm going to hit the check mark, which means, yeah, I like it, it's good. Check, and then it'll stay. If you don't hit the check mark, you can't do anything else. You got to do that first. It tells Photoshop you're done. Now I want to make him kind of look like he's angling down at these people. So I'm a little morbid. So instead, I want to do a rotate. So instead, there's a lot of different, notice like if I want to move him, I come in the middle. If I want to resize him, I come over here. If I come outside, I get this icon, this double-headed arrow. And that's how you tilt and rotate. So if you want him to fly up or down, which I think I'm going to have him flying down, I can do that. Again, every time I do something, when I'm done, I got to hit this check mark. If I don't hit this check mark, look what happens. I can't get into any of my menus. The computer is waiting for me to finish doing what I was doing. So that check mark's really important that you hit that every time you're done. Or you can hit enter, by the way. So I always go to the check mark, but definitely enter is the probably faster way. All right, so I've got my bird, wouldn't it be nice if I could have a couple more? There's a fast way to do that. I know a lot of people think, well, I'll go back and I'll do another cut and paste or something. I'll bring another version in. Let's look at the layers palette real quick. We're almost done here, but there's a couple things I want to show you. Everybody should have their layers palette open. And here it is. Couple things to notice. You have something called a background layer, which is the one that I brought in with the people. I can turn that on and off. There's a little eyeball. So if I want to just see my pelican, I can turn that off. And anytime you see this checkerboard, that means it's see-through. It's transparent. It's blank. It's nothing. Okay? So I can always turn these eyeballs off to kind of see what's going on. That's kind of nice. Another nice thing to do is to make a copy. These are called layers. We're going to work with these a ton. This is the power of Photoshop right here. So another nice thing is I want to make a copy of my pelican, an exact duplicate. This is how Photoshop deals with making a copy of something. You're going to take that layer and we're going to drag it down to this, basically down at the bottom here. We're going to drag that layer down to here. Don't just push the button, but we're going to drag it down. Let me show you here. I'm going to make it, I made it a little too, okay. So I grab my layer, and I'm just going to grab it over here on the right, and I bring it right over top of that little piece of paper and let go. I'll do that one more time. Grab that layer, bring it right over top of that piece of paper, let go, and now I get a copy. Another nice thing to do, you can imagine if you had 20 different, let's say we wanted to put 20 different birds in the sky, it would get hard to know which is which. So sometimes it's easier when you have lots of layers to name them. So you can click on one layer and then double click on the name, and I can call this I think I'm going to call this Mama Bird, because I'm going to make that a bigger bird, and the other one I'm going to size smaller, and then the other one I think I'm going to call Baby Bird. And then I've got the background. All right, so now I've got two birds. It doesn't look like it, but you do. If you click on the bird, you can move them apart, and you can see that, yes, indeed, you do have two birds. They look identical. The one that's called Mama Bird, I'm going to click on that layer, and I can see which one because I get the little handles. And I'm going to make that one a little bigger. That's going to be Mama Bird, and then the Baby Bird. Remember, you got to hit enter once you resize something, or go to the check mark. Then I can come over here and grab this bird. And maybe he's kind of following right behind. I mean, I could make a million birds like that, right? I can make another one. Again, it won't let you do anything until I hit enter. So if you're trying to do something and it's not working, try just hitting your enter key. It might mean that you've resized something and you never hit the check mark or enter. All right, I made another copy. So now maybe I'm going to call this one, I don't know, Daddy Bird. All right, so again, every time I want a new copy, I can do that. And this one's even going to be bigger. You get the idea now. All right, so here's what your goal is for this project, and if you want to get your full, I think it's 20 points. You have to add one more item to this picture. Okay? So you decide what it's going to be. I don't care if it makes sense or if it's completely wacky. It's entertain me. But you're going to go out, get another picture, whatever you want to search for. Let's say now I decided I was going to search for a rocket ship. I don't know. Yeah, and a lot of times you get cartoons. You want to make sure you get photographs, not cartoons. They look silly. I know. Well, if you really want to put oh, I don't know. I might have to put this baby in there. That's pretty cute. But look for whatever you want. I think I'll just, pick something. Get a big version of it if you can. Download it. I'm not going to walk you through it because I want you to think it through. Select the object. So, last hour I did a beach ball. So I was able to select the beach ball, copy it, or cut it, paste it in. So I want you to kind of walk through it yourself, because you don't learn when I tell you every step. Sometimes the only way you learn is just trial and error. So this is not good for a couple weeks, so if you don't get done, that's fine. The only thing I want to show you what to do when you do finish at the end of the hour, what do we got? 15 minutes. This will give you some time. But when you do finish with this project, or if you're in the middle of it and you don't get finished, here's what I think that would be a good idea, is you're going to do a file, save as, and you can just do this right now if you want, just to be safe. Because, you learned probably in middle school, save your work, right? So if you need to save it, if you remember, if you get into this dialog box and you don't see the big version, you just got to click that little arrow to unfold it. Here are the rules to saving, just as a reminder. You have to have your last name in the file name. So up here, and I don't care what you name it. So ESV, I'm just going to use my last name, and Bird in the Sky is a good name for it. Now notice that it says PSD. What do you need to turn in to get credit for ePark? JPEGs. That's the only thing it'll accept. And a PDF, but this is a PSD. This is not one of the files that I will accept, so I won't grade this. But this is what those layers are. So when you had mama bird, baby bird, all that, if you want to keep working with those, you've got to save it as a PSD. If you're done with it and you're ready to turn it in, then you save it as a JPEG. So what I always tell people, always save 2 versions when you have multiple layers like this. That way, if you want to get back to the one with layers, you can. So the first thing I would do is go ahead and put it wherever you want, desktop. Hopefully you have a folder maybe called tutorials. I do. So I'm putting mine in my tutorials. If you don't have one, I would recommend making a new folder. There's a button at the bottom, because you're going to have lots of tutorials, and then after a while your desktop gets really cluttered. All right, so I'm putting it in tutorials. It's a Photoshop document. I click save. I get this dialog box. Just click OK when you get that one, okay? It's nothing important. Then you have to, when you're done with this, you have to do another save as a JPEG. So when you're finished, you're going to need to do a file, save as again. Same name, same folder. The only difference is, look up here please, because this is where a lot of points come off. You have to choose it from this drop down. Drop down, and there's a bunch of different JPEGs. You just want the plain one, JPEG. Okay, same name, and you can see it even says here. See the little exclamation point? It's saying you are going to lose those layers. So all of those layers are going to get stuck together. But that's okay, because you have your other one with the layers. So that's why you always want 2. One with layers, one without. The one without is getting turned in. The one with layers is you're working. All right? And click save. And then when you get this dialog box, the only thing you want to confirm is that it's maximum. Everything should always be maximum, 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 so we have the best quality. So if you're not done working with this, go ahead and keep working on it. I'm sure you're not. And then whenever you're ready to turn it in, just make sure you have saved it as a JPEG from this dialog box. Remember, you can never type JPEG. You can only do File, Save As, choose it from the menu. It's the only way that it works.
What's your super number?